of Petty Officer Musician H.S. Karki playing Jai Bharati, which was composed by
The largest television network which brings to your home these momentous moments instantaneously is Doordarshan. The competence of television in this sphere is matched by no other media. These images are brought to you by aesthetically sensitive and technically skilled professionals, bringing together a great many communication artists to produce a program. The number varies from 100 to a few hundred, depending upon the magnitude of coverage. Doordarshan has a large number of OB and field production vans and the latest equipment. It can send and receive signals to and from any part of the country. It telecasts today in 18 regional languages, apart from Hindi and English. Doordarshan has nearly 928 transmitters all over the country. Its international channel covers 1/3 of the world. Television in India had a very humble yet an interesting beginning. The first closed-circuit picture on television was seen in India in the International Trade Fair at Pragati Maidan, and the equipment brought to this fair marked the beginning of a new era in September 1959 by starting a 1-hour television program twice a week as an experimental service from Delhi. The formal inauguration by the President of India, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, took place on the 15th of September 1959 at Vigyan Bhavan. The beginning was made from a makeshift studio at Akashvani Bhavan with a 500-watt transmitter with a reach of 25 kilometers around Delhi. Out of the 25 sets, only 18 could function for want of electricity. Pratima Puri was the first announcer.
पहले दिन बग़ैर किसी ट्रेनिंग के बग़ैर कुछ बताए कैमरे के सामने खड़ा कर दिया। कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा था क्या बोलना है क्या नहीं बोलना है, कैसे करना है, किधर देखना है, और नर्वस तो होना ही था। खैर हमारे एक चीफ प्रोड्यूसर थे पीएल देशपांडे जी, उन्होंने मुझे आके कहा कि देखो प्रतिमा, हम आपको एक टिप देते हैं। आप ये समझ लीजिए कि ड्राइंग रूम में आप थोड़े से लोगों के सामने बातचीत कर रही हैं और बस ये भूल जाइए कि और कोई देख रहा है या नहीं देख रहा है, ठीक है। वो एक टिप सारी उम्र मुझे जब तक मैं टीवी में रही हूँ मेरे काम आया है।
Ever since her first announcement, audience appreciation and admiration for her and television programs increased day by day. Unlike the West, India preferred to use television for educational and developmental purposes than for mere entertainment. To bring rural masses into the mainstream and have their cooperation in national development, sets were installed in villages and schools. Mr. Shailendra Shankar was the first officer on special duty television.
When we started TV, we were very keen that it should act as a catalyst for social change. And I'm glad that we have contributed to that in an immense way. Television has now spread all across the country. There are innumerable channels also available, and this is a recent development. And the other thing is, people seldom realize when we started, the industry, particularly electronic industry, was nowhere in sight. Today, the boom in electronic industry is due to television.
The Tele Club program was the first to start, with the help of the Ford Foundation, in terms of television sets and equipment.
जिनको आता नहीं है वफा का चलन उनसे लगी है लगन ठेस लगती है जिस दम तो कहता है मन उजड़े न दिल का चमन.
Realizing the need for educational programs for schools, school television was started on the 24th of October, 1961. Educational programs were produced in collaboration with the Directorate of Education and the British Council. Jay Chandiram was one of the first producers.
This was a major project and remains a historic project in the history of educational television all over the world, taking up about 400 schools and supplying them with TV sets and producing programs with a great deal of clarity in the educational tasks. The educational task was we had a new curriculum in science. We had very little laboratories because of the changeover of rebuilding India in from its freedom and was going through this reconstruction. And we had very few trained teachers and very little laboratories. So the educational television addressed these tasks.
Today, almost all major kendras of Doordarshan telecast educational programs covering pre-primary, primary and the university level of audience. Programs are produced by Doordarshan and educational agencies like UGC, MCRC, AVRC, CIET, IGNOU and other agencies. A daily one-hour evening program could only start after a gap of 3 years, on the 15th of August 1965, when the second studio in Broadcasting House Auditorium came up. The equipment and technical assistance was provided by the Federal Republic of Germany. Doordarshan has helped in a big way in bringing about a green revolution through its agricultural programs. The first Krishi Darshan program was started on the 26th of January 1967. It is mandatory for all Doordarshan Kendras to put out rural programs in local languages. They form a major chunk of regional programs. No other television channel has contributed towards agricultural development of the country. Nearly 13 years later, on the 2nd of October 1972, the second television center came up at Mumbai, again with the help of the Federal Republic of Germany.
कुचक्या मेंदूतून हे विचार निघाले तो मेंदूच एखाद्या शहामृगीच्या अंड्यासारखा वाटकन फोडून टाकावा.
Srinagar Kendra started on the 26th of January 1973. And Amritsar on the 29th of September 1973 with its studio at Jalandhar. Television had established its power to communicate to people, but the slow pace of development in remote areas worried the communicators. So Doordarshan undertook a major experiment in communication to remote areas in 1975 through the satellite instructional television experiment known as SITE. The SITE experiment spread over 6 states: Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, Bihar, Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka. Covering 4 districts in each state with 2,400 direct reception sets, it continued for 1 year, from August 1975 to July 1976. The programs were produced by Doordarshan at its base production centers at Delhi, Hyderabad and Cuttack. However, ISRO teams contributed science programs in addition to research and maintenance of sets.
एक गांव में 2 सच्चे दोस्त रहते थे। एक का नाम था देवदत्त।
Specifically devised and produced programs were beamed through ATS-6 satellite, which was provided by NASA.
The greatest thing which happened, I may be partial, was the involvement of Doordarshan in the satellite instructional television experiment. Here was a challenge. We had a long reach. We could go far. But we had to make programs for people who were very different. And we had to call them developmental programs, educational programs, and of course entertaining programs. During that process, the amount which was learned by people all across the country, social scientists, all communicators, Doordarshan, I don't think it's been paralleled by anything.
Doordarshan delinked from Akashvani in 1976. August the 15th, 1982, can be considered a red-letter day in the history of Indian television. On this day, 4 major projects came up, switching from black and white to color transmission, starting off the national program, operationalization of INSAT 1A, and the use of the microwave link for TV transmission. The coverage of the 9th Asian Games in 1982 was an unprecedented challenge for Doordarshan. About 5,000 competitors pitched in 21 events at 18 widely scattered venues in Delhi, Jaipur and Bombay were to be caught in action, and the scene kept moving from one place to another in quick succession. The feed was relayed by 21 countries, including highlights. Equipment was new and inadequate. Manpower was limited, but Doordarshan could do it professionally, meeting international standards in spite of all odds. The success of the Asian Games coverage was acclaimed by professionals all over the world and put Doordarshan on the international map.
In the entire history of Doordarshan, that was the greatest saga of enthusiasm, saga of teamwork, and saga of a will to achieve. I think it was a great teamwork. And in a short time, say about 4 months or so, that was the time in which people from various stations, Doordarshan had almost grown sort of regionally, because Delhi being the only center till 72. Then Calcutta, Madras, Lucknow, etc. These centers came up. Bombay, of course, in 72. But they had grown individually. Staff was recruited, sent back for training, back to the station. And there was no chance for Doordarshan staff to mix with each other. That was the first occasion that Doordarshan knew its strength. And the strength lay in the entire staff which had come to cover this great event. I remember when I took over, we were a core of about 9 people, and 9 to 900. Those 900 rode into the valley of television adventure and achieved something unthinkable. I remember we received hundreds of letters and faxes and telephone calls from viewers and television organizations. And one I can never forget, and that was from a former Secretary INB, Mr. Ashok Mitra.
What you are showing is incredibly good, and you and your team deserves the warmest thanks of every viewer. Television is an instantaneous medium, but when great events come in quick succession, the task becomes even more exacting. 2 months after the Asian Games, the non-aligned meet was hosted by India. In this, more than 100 heads of state and government participated. Mrs. Indira Gandhi was elected chairperson of NAM, and Doordarshan's responsibility increased manifold. As in Asiad, so in NAM too, Doordarshan's performance was commended by one and all. The Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in New Delhi was another occasion for Doordarshan to show its professional mettle. And by now, coverage of such events in India and abroad had become routine for Doordarshan. Doordarshan instituted national awards for its staff for creative excellence. Many films were awarded in different categories. Doordarshan's productions have been screened at festivals abroad and have won awards and appreciation. In order to provide a wider and bigger network, India witnessed with unfailing regularity the installation of 1 transmitter a day in the later part of 1984. It called for a lot of planning, effort and dedication on the part of Doordarshan's engineers.
Under this scheme, 117 numbers of 100 kilowatt low power transmitters and 27 numbers of 10 kilowatt high power transmitters along with their associated antennas were to be installed starting from 1st July 1984 to 17th October 1984 non-stop. Probably this is the only occasion all over the world where such a large number of transmitters have been installed in such a short time.
These transmitters had the capability of relaying Delhi's programs as well as regional programs.
With a large number of low power transmitters, and I had hoped that a lot of our programs will be produced also around those transmitters, more or less by people who are around those transmitters. And the long range programs, state programs, national programs, international programs will come via satellite and will be shared by all.
Satellite technology proved a boon for transmitting TV signals to far-flung areas, and the number of sets increased rapidly. In 1983, it was 2.78 million, while in 1997, it stands at nearly 65 million. Going by statistics, we find that in the year 1982, the area covered by the DD signal was just 13.5%, and the population 25%. Today, it stands at 69.2% area and 87.1% of the population. To present India's varied cultural heritage, the national program of music and dance was started in 1982. It is relayed from all Kendras. Eminent artists feature in this program. Television has been the advertiser's first choice all over the world, and in India too. The commercial service came into existence in January 1976.
माँ, मेरी पीठ ठोक, मुझे शाबाशी दे।
But it was in 1982, after the introduction of colour TV and the National Network Service, that commercial earnings increased from 7.7 million rupees to nearly 6.2 billion rupees in 1997, establishing the fact that Doordarshan is the advertiser's best choice. Earning money has never been a first priority for Doordarshan. The maximum commercial time allowed is 10% of the program time, but it is still much below the mark. Doordarshan still maintains its image to act as an instrument for social change. It still prefers to inform, educate, and then entertain viewers. TV is a medium that cannot bask in the sunshine of yesterday. Every day the TV viewer expects to see something new. The TV viewer's choice is very varied and diverse. To provide alternate viewing, DD started its Channel 2 in Delhi in 1984.
दूसरा दूरदर्शन का चैनल खोल रहे हैं। टीवी कोई धनी लोगों की चीज़ नहीं है, बल्कि उल्टा ही है कि जो चीज़ें आज थोड़े से लोगों तक पहुंच सकती हैं, शहर के लोगों के पास पहुंचती हैं, वो सारे देश में पहुंचे।
Today, DD Metro can be viewed countrywide. February 1987 marked the introduction of the morning transmission. DD started the afternoon transmission from the 26th of January 1989. The afternoon service essentially caters to housewives and family members who are at home. The number of community viewing centres has increased to 30,000, and a large number of people in rural areas who are still not able to afford television sets can view programs at these centres at government expense. In its search for excellence in programming, Doordarshan set up its Central Production Centre, CPC, New Delhi in February 1989. It has sophisticated equipment manned by experts and state-of-the-art equipment. Its productions are of high technical and professional quality. In spite of vast expansion, Delhi Kendra still remains the main Kendra. It telecasts 60 hours of programming per day on various channels. And on an average, it does 1 OB per day. In order to provide variety and rich programs, Doordarshan invited eminent filmmakers like Satyajit Ray, Shyam Benegal and others to make programs for it. Some of these have won awards at the national and international level. Doordarshan has been instrumental in bringing media to the industrial level, and presently there are a large number of channels operating in the country. It has provided jobs to a large number of youth, artists and communicators.
We have at present one of the largest TV network in the world. We have got a large number of transmitters, and we are constantly increasing the number so that the entire population gets covered by terrestrially. We have got a huge chunk of satellite transmission also. So far as the future of Doordarshan is concerned, we are always keeping space with the modern technologies, and equipments are being updated accordingly.
In recent years, a large number of TV channels have come. Satellite channels, where programs made in different countries, programs made in India also, are telecast very nicely packaged in a very sexy way. Enormous number of programs which are taken from films, large number of programs, models, fashions, and so on. Essentially, large number directed at the upmarket who are spending money, and another large number directed to people who would be delighted by seeing continuously just mythological programs. And the excuse is, of course, these are the programs which attract large audiences, and we need large audiences in order to sell things. It is not the interest of people. They say people want it, and we want to attract them, and so we'll show these programs. Tastes of people are created. Tastes can be created. And so I personally think it would be a very wrong policy on the part of Doordarshan to join them in doing exactly what they are doing, rather than creating a new path